But so anyway, it's this is an ocean. I am very limited in my capabilities due to my lack of knowledge or familiarity with classical Tamil. Right? I read some translations here and there, but I have some interest in history per se. So what I hope to do is I hope to also talk a little bit about the history surrounding Sambandar and his life and what its relevance. There is nobody else who has had that kind of impact. And you can see the other thing I found similarity with Bhagavan and Sambandar is this incredible self-assurance, for lack of a better word. I mean, they were merged in Shiva, and they knew it. There was just nothing unshakable. Their utterances come with that force and power. I'll give a little bit of translations here and there where I can. You can see that, and I think that is also makes them, the two of them, very similar. I'll read a few lines from Devaraja Mudaliar's reminiscences. And he says that he's observed Bhagavan talk about the Nayanars, and yet I have observed that Bhagavan considered Tirunjana Sambandar the most powerful manifestation of God's grace amongst these famous saints. He pointed out that Sambandar frequently referred to Tiruvannamalai, and I'll come to that. I'll say, it's a nice thing, but I'll visit that point again. He has also remarked more than once about Sambandar. See with what confidence and authority he says that those who sing his songs will be saved. Is he not God's son? I think that's an apt introduction to why that title. So the 63 saints, this picture would be familiar to, I think, hopefully to all of you. Anyone who's been to a temple in Tamil Nadu, you'll see this picture. There is a history behind how these murtis of the 63 saints came to adorn the inner prakaram of every Shiva temple. And I'll come to that story as to how this tradition started. This tradition started only around the 10th, 11th century. It's not older than that. But these saints, what is unique is all 63 of them came in about 200 to 300 year period, from about the 5th to the 8th centuries in India. And there were also 12 Vaishnavite saints around the same time. And these saints are the progenitors of what is called the Bhakti movement in India. And what Bhakti movement, it just emphasized the direct personal connection with an Ishtadevata as a mode of practice. you could say, de-emphasized some of the more ritualistic or the approaches of the Vedic things. But what's clear is in every one of their utterances, they said, this is the Vedic tradition. They just came up with a new way of approaching God within the Vedic tradition. But this was a revelation. In some ways, you could say it was a response to Buddhism and Jainism, and I'll come to that. If you look at what is called the Sangam period in Tamil Nadu, it's about 300 BCE to 300 CE. Those 600 years are considered the Sangam period. There were 5 famous texts that Hari talked about Uwe Swaminathan Venkataraman yesterday. He was responsible really for collecting and compiling them and publishing those 6 texts. But if you see them, there is a lot of Buddhist and Jain influence in those texts. And this was a time when Buddhism and Jainism were actually quite prevalent in Tamil Nadu. Some go to the extent of saying it was the majority faith. I'm not sure about that, but it certainly was patronized by the kings of the time. Right, so they were very powerful. So these Nayanars, they were the start of what is called the Bhakti movement. It is a movement that would then spread and revolutionize the entire country of India over the next 1,000 years. So you can talk about 5th century here, and then come 15th, 16th century, you are talking about Mirabai and Kabir and all of them in North India. It's the same movement that sweeps across the country over the course of a millennium. A lot of scholars say that the Nayanars sang Buddhism and Jainism out of Tamil Nadu. That's sort of a poetic way of saying, how the other traditions became much less. And in doing that, you could say that while the Nayanars are credited with that, and particularly 4 of them, and I mentioned, but even among those 4, Sambandar is undoubtedly the number. He's the ringleader, if you will. Undoubtedly, he also coincided in terms of time period with one of the other 4, Upper or Tirunavukarasar, and you could see that he was just absolutely, like in all of his songs, he made no bones that Buddhism and Jainism are not the true faiths. Not they are wrong. They don't take you to where you need to go. He's like explicit about it. And they have debates about Jains and Buddhists. So in a way, his mission for which he came to earth was, I can only think of Shankara as a parallel in that sense. Even Shankara had that. He had the pure spiritual purpose. In Shankara's case, it was Advaita. In Sambandar's case, it is Shaivism or devotion to Shiva. And Bhagavan's case, of course, is bringing Advaita to the modern period. But Sambandar had that, he had that he had that responsibility. He came for that purpose. So the 12 Tirumurais, as they're called. So this is basically the history of what happened to the Shiva tradition in Tamil Nadu. So this was the time. So this was the early 11th century. So if you remember, I said certainly between up to about 300 or so CE, it was largely a time where Buddhism and Jainism were very, very prevalent. And then after that came the Nayanars. The Nayanars came, they sang, they did what they had to, they affected the change. But their songs were largely, I won't say lost, but they had faded into obscurity. They were not widely prevalent. And so come this 10th century, perhaps the greatest of all the Chola kings, Rajaraja Chola, is in the throne. And during his time, I'll mention this. There is this person called Nambiandar Nambi. As a child, his father is a priest in a Ganesha temple. And he goes and he knows what his father does. He knows that his father does puja and then offer food to God, and then they all eat, right? So one day, he's still a very young boy. The father has to go out. He tells the boy, "You do the puja and the offering to God today," and he goes. And so Nambiandar Nambi does that, and then he offers the food in front of Ganesha, and he waits for Ganesha to come and eat the food, because that's what he thinks happens every day when his father offers food. And then, when lo and behold, there's nothing happening, and he grows upset. He thinks there's something wrong with the puja that he did. And he prays again, please come and eat the food. And nothing happens. And he starts crying. And he starts crying so pitiably that literally Ganesha comes and eats the food. And the boy is so happy. And then he goes back and the mother says, where is the food? He said, no, Ganesha ate it. And the mother was like incredulous. She wouldn't believe it. So the next day, the same thing happens. The boy, Ganesha, comes and eats it. This time, the mother and father are there witnessing this. And they are like completely overjoyed. And the news spreads like wildfire. And Raja Chola himself comes to this place. This place is called Tirunarayur. And this boy, in the course of his prayer, he sings a few songs that Raja Chola is just mesmerized. What are you singing? The boy says, these are called Tevarams. And he said, where are they? I mean, I don't know where these songs are. And he says, well, I know a few. They have just come down by some oral tradition. They're not written down anywhere. So Raja Chola sets up a commission in place, makes him the head of the commission, and says, go and find out all these songs, because these are the songs of our saints, and they are not known. And so Nambiandar Nambi heads this thing, and he prays, because he has no idea where they are. He prays to Ganesha again. So Ganesha tells him, go to Chidambaram temple. Near the shrine, there is a room that has been locked for a long time. You go there and you will find the songs. So he goes there. The Dikshitars, which are the traditional hereditary community that manages the temple, they refuse to open it. They say there's no tradition of opening that room. It's been locked for centuries. We will not open it. So what Nambiandar Nambi does, he makes a murti of the Tevaram saints, the big four. He makes a murti of the four of them. He puts it in front of that room and he sings the Tevarams, and the doors open. The locks break and the doors open. And then they go in and they find palm leaves, highly moth-eaten. So according to some historical accounts, only 10% of the songs composed by Sambandar and all these people survive today. Not all of them don't. Maybe it's not 10%, but the point is it was heavily moth-eaten, and there were some. But here's the point I made earlier. The fact that he made the murtis of the four saints for the doors to open, that started the tradition for Raja Chola, saying, make all the 63 murtis in every Shiva temple. So he started that in the 10th, 11th centuries, and today that continues. Whenever you build a Shiva temple, you put the murtis of all 63 of them. So Nambiandar Nambi collects these songs. The first one, of course, is Jnana Sambandar, the most profound, strongest. He was like a gale force, right? That just swept everything in his path, a tornado almost, right? So his songs are the first thing. So Tirumurai, 12 Tirumurais, this is the official formal Shaiva canon, the 12 texts of the Shaiva, Tamil Shaiva tradition. The first three are Jnana Sambandar songs. The next three are Appar or Tirunamakarasa's songs. They are the ones who have visited the most temples and sung the most number of songs, and they were contemporaries. The two of them, they have met. Sundaramurti Nayanar is among the last of them. I think he's probably the last of them all. And he writes a song, which is the song on which our Satya based his beautiful composition yesterday, right? He put 108 devotees of Bhagavan, but what Sundaramurti Nayanar did was he said 60 devotees of Shiva, not 63. Why? He left himself out, because he said, I am the servant of the servant of the servants. I'm not fit to be in this list. I will include the others. So he stopped with 60. Later on, they included, I'll come when the Periya Puranam was written, Sundaramurti Nayanar himself and his parents were both included to make the number 63. That's the number we have now. So that's number 7. Manika Vasagar, which we all know, Tiruvasagam, Tirukovayar, and so on. That is the Tirumurai number 8. There are a number of other smaller Nayanars who have written songs. They come in number 9. Number 10 is Tirumula's Tirumandiram, which goes even into the BCE era. It's a much older text, right? That is the 10th one. And then Nambiandar Nambi, he expanded upon Sundaramurti Nayanar's work to create a slightly more elaborate version. Sundaramurti Nayanar was just one song, right? Like the one song you saw of Satya's yesterday. It was one song. So this is, he expanded on it to make it somewhat larger. And then, but that was done during Rajaraja Chola's time in the early 11th century. And that was followed about 100 years later in the 12th century, which is the Periya Puranam. And I also speak of all this, the relevance to Bhagavan, of course, is that Periya Puranam is the only religious work that Bhagavan had read before he had his great experience. And that's what transformed him. And even after he had the death experience, when he was in Madurai for the next several weeks, he would go to the Meenakshi temple. He would stand there and he would be praying, please give me the devotion of those 63 saints, right? So that was the depth of emotion that this Periya Puranam evoked in Bhagavan. I thought I would like to at least play one or two of these songs just for, just to give you a sense. I'll only play a minute. I won't take much time. This is the Sundaramurti Nayanar's, Tirutondar Togai, which starts with Tillai Vaal Andanar. So it goes on like that. For some reason, I'm playing a video. The video is not showing. I'm not sure why. So I thought it has the names of the Nayanars who are being sung and all of that. Okay, so these are the four. The left is the boy wonder, if you will, Sambandar, about whom we are talking today. This is Tirunavukarasar, Sundaramurti Nayanar, and Manikavasagar, right? So very notably, you have both the Appar and Manikavasagar. Well, see, in some ways, Manikavasagar, if you look at his poetry in Tiruvasagam, you can almost sense an Aksharamanamala like Nayaka Nayaki Bhavam in many of his songs, right? If you look at Appar, he was the servant, devotee of the Lord. If you look at Sundarar, he was the friend of the Lord. He would just talk to him, and he had God play Cupid to him. Like he wanted to marry a girl, and he told Shiva to go and speak to them. So he was like, I'm the friend of the Lord, right, so to speak. And then Sambandar, of course, is the son of Shiva. So even here, you see how the same act of devotion can be approached from different angles, from different perspectives, depending on the personality of the devotee. Okay, so what I'm going to do is you'll see a lot of these maps. I thought it would bring it a little more to life if I actually showed you where these are in the Indian map as you go along. We can see the places that we are talking about. What you're seeing here, if you see the blue sort of line, that's the Kaveri River. And you see the ocean is right there. So we're really talking about the edge of Tamil Nadu, the delta, Kaveri Delta. You see the main town there, it is highlighted, Sirgari. That is where Sambandar was born. You see the other town there, Tirunarayu, that is the town where Nambiandar Nambi lived, and he compiled the songs. And then Tanjavur, I showed it also because that's where Rajaraja Chola was. This is the capital of the Chola kingdom. Now, the reason I wanted to show this is in each of these maps, I will always have Sirgari as one of the locations so that you can sort of get a sense for where this was. You can also sense the intensity of the activity because from my best reading of the translations of Periya Puranam and Sambandar songs, he has sung of a few North Indian temples too, Kailash, for example, Kedarnath. But if you read the translations, it doesn't appear, unlike Shankara, that he actually traveled to those places. Even Shankara, as a boy between 8 and 16, he traveled. He wrote his, by 16, he had written in Kashi all the commentaries, right? And then 16 to 32, he traveled India twice. But Sambandar didn't look like he traveled because it explicitly says that Tamil not being a spoken language north of the territory, Sambandar sang of these temples while staying in the Tamil region, right? It specifically says that. So I think you will see how clustered it is here and how powerful that activity would have been. It's almost like, imagine a saint of the power of Sambandar or Bhagavan, let's say. They went to every zip code and they lived there for weeks at a time and sang songs and gathered crowds and spoke to them. Imagine something like that happening. That's really, you'll see that as you look at these maps, right? That's almost literally what they did. In every zip code, every village, there was a temple. He went there, he sang songs, he brought the people together, and he told them that this is the way to go, not Buddhism and Jainism. He would make no bones about that. These, by the way, these are all various names in the Periya Puranam for the same town of Sirgari. I'm sure every one of them has a story behind it. I don't know what all the stories are, but these are some dozen names or so for the same town. So this is the temple. It's called Brahmapurishwarar. I was able to go here. In 2022, last summer. I was there. So they are currently actually renovating the temple for Kumbhabhisheka. It is getting ready. And during the course of the Kumbhabhisheka, I read some news in April of this year, 2023, that they actually discovered in this temple, unknown now today also, copper plates containing Tevarams. So it's not during Rajaraja Chola's time, 1,000 years ago. Even in 2023, they are still discovering. And they said it was good because in many other places, it has been referred to that there are copper plates containing Tevarams, whereas the original discovery was only palm leaf manuscripts. So obviously the copper plates were made, they are being, as we speak, they are being, they had whatever, some green colored chemical, covering over time. So they are being studied further. So this temple is somewhat also unique in the sense that it is a 3-tiered temple. So you will see here that Brahmapurishwarar temple, as it is called, and he is worshipped as Shiva at the lower level of the temple. But you can see 2 yellow sort of canopies as you climb up. You can actually climb up the tower, which you cannot normally do in most temples. Here you can actually climb up. And then there are 2 other, there's all Shiva lingams, Toni Upper in the middle and Sattainadar on top. So there are 3-tiered temple, for lack of a better word. Okay, so now you come to the first of the illustrations I talked about by that lady, Padmini Kapalimurthy. So you'll just see a large number of these photos, and I will just talk about the story itself. So Sambandar was born in this town, Sirgari, with the Brahmapurishwara temple. It's located in the Kaveri Delta, hardly 10-15 kilometers from the ocean. He was born, some say 6th century, some say 7th century. It's not 100% certain, but even if it's a 7th century, when he was born, this is of course Chola country. But at that time, Madurai, where one of his most important events in his life takes place, was ruled by a Pandya king called Kun Pandyan, who was a Jain at the time. And he was using state power to push Jainism over, Hinduism at that time. So Sambandar's parents are Shivapada Hridaya and Bhagavati Amma. Those are their names. And they pray to Shiva for a son who will help re-establish the Vedic religion. That is their prayer. We want a son because they are, they want a devout son who will make that happen. So that's their prayer, and Sambandar is born. This is a photo of Sambandar's house, just as we have the house in Tiruchuri. There is a house in Sirgari where Sambandar was born, and this is that room, and there is a picture of him. There's a picture of him there. So here is another. I've already alluded to a number of similarities with Bhagavan, right? So here is the first other type of stunning similarity, if you will. Sambandar is also born on Arudra Darshan, like Bhagavan, and as a boy, he does though behave differently as a child, right? In the sense that he is not that interested in playing with the others. He makes Shivalingams out of sand and does puja to it. He has that aptitude, but he's still a child, right? This is like 3 years. At 3 years of age, the big transformation in his life happens. So this is the temple tank. He tells his father, "Take me to the temple," and so his father takes him to the temple for the first time. This person here is supposed to be the father, I guess. So he goes into the temple. It's a tradition that you dip into the temple. You go under the water, and then you come back. It's as a routine. So he goes under, and the boy grows worried. He says, "Where's my father?" And he starts crying. And he starts crying so, in such a heartrending, heartfelt manner that the Lokamata and Lokapita feel compelled to respond. So Shiva and Parvati come there, and Shiva tells Parvati to feed him milk because and so Parvati comes and gives him milk, and then they disappear. And then the father comes up, and he sees milk dripping down the mouth, the side of the mouth of the boy, and he gets ready to chastise him. "Why are you drinking milk from strangers? What are you doing?" That sort of thing. And so he asks him, "Okay, who gave you this milk?" And the response is a song, and the song basically says, "Lord Shiva is the one who gave me milk," right? And I think, to me, this is the other big similarity with Bhagavan compared with most other saints. There is just one event, and it completely transforms a child into a sage. There's no going back after that. Permanently established in the self, everything else comes deep from the self with the ultimate authority of the divine. That's it. There's no more asking. I think that's a great similarity. It's very hard to find saints like that. Jnana Sambandar is one of those. Just no sadhana, no going to a guru and getting upadesa, nothing. It's just one divine intervention, and that's it. The transformation is complete. Let me see if I can play this song, although I guess the video will not show, or maybe if I open from here. In escape point, it might show. Okay, let me see. So this was the thing, but let me show. This is the other song. It basically says, it's just who gave it to you. He describes Shiva, Todudaya Seviyan. He with the earrings. Oh, sorry. So so this song, it's also interesting. It says Ullam Kavar Kalvan, the thief who stole my heart, right? That's the translation, and it usually just means that somebody who captivates me. It could even be in the more human relationship sense, right? But Bhagavan actually talks about this. It's in Talk 529. He just gives a short summary. Jnana Sambandar was born. He goes to the temple. Shiva feeds him, all of that. And it's interesting that Bhagavan translates Ullam Kavar Kalvan not as the thief who stole my heart, but as the thief who robbed me of my mind. I thought that's a very beautiful. So to say that that he realized the self. That's what he's talking about. But his not only does the boy immediately reveal who he is and where he is, the song in a way also explains his mission in the world, right? So all of the songs are called padigams, like Bhagavan has written a padigam too, right? So 10 verses, 11 verses, and if you look at the verses in this very first padigam, right? If you look at the last 4 verses, I think they are quite illustrative. The first 7, they praise Shiva, that's what describe him and so on. But the last 4, number 8, it has the story of Ravana trying to lift Kailasa, and Shiva just using his, the little finger of his feet to just, tamp him down, right? So, of course, Kailash is Lord Shiva himself, right? So, like one ultimate location. Stanza number 9, the other example he gives is Arunachala. He says, he who could not be measured by Brahma and Vishnu, right? And this is maybe, Satya may know better, but I believe in most of his songs, he ends the last 4 paragraphs, I've still not come to the other 2, or follow this pattern. There is Kailasha and there is Arunachala, right? And then the 10th one is, he basically condemns Buddhists and Jains. He said, this is not, they are following the wrong path, right? And then the 11th one, he speaks about himself. And then in a lot of his songs, he says, he who sings this song will get moksha. Can you imagine that for a 3-year-old boy singing his first song and saying, he who sings this song will attain moksha, that the power that must have come from that song. And so this is a pattern you see, and that his life's mission is right there. And I find it also maybe another similarity to Bhagavan in the sense that the 2 examples he chose are Kailash and Arunachala. Kailash, of course, is considered the abode of Shiva, and Arunachala is the other example he uses. This is the tank of the Sirgari temple, where the story happens. And these are the illustrations you can find in that temple itself. So this is Shiva and Parvati appearing to the boy. That is Parvati giving him milk. That is the father coming out with a stick in hand, reprimanding him. And then the parents become the first disciples of the boy. after he sings that song, they become right there, they become his first disciples. Okay, so then you could sort of say the travels begin immediately. The very next day, they go to this temple in this place called Tirukkolakka. It's very close to, I don't know why the map didn't come up, but there should be a map. I'll show you where it is. They go to this temple, and Sambandar sings, and he keeps time with his hands as he sings, right? And what happens is, when he finishes that song, a pair of golden cymbals appear, and they fall in front of the Shiva shrine in the temple. And someone that starts taking that, as a boy, they say as a boy, Shiva couldn't bear his son's hands will hurt from constant clapping. So he gives him the cymbals, and then he uses the cymbals going forward. So you will see that in every depiction of Sambandar in any temple, you will see him holding cymbals, in the hand. So that's the map. Oh, sorry. So you will see. Let me see if I can locate. Okay, you see Sirgari on top, the blue lines. You see Sirgari on the left, and then right next to it, you see Tirukkolakka Saptapurishwara temple. Again, just to give you a location, you see the Kaveri river right there, and you see the ocean. Most of these are, even Sirgari is only 10 kilometers from the ocean, to give you a sense of scale. So even like this far end left Shivapuram that we're talking about is no more than, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 kilometers from the ocean. It's very, very, very focused. So that's the first temple he goes to. And then the next day, he goes to, do you see the mouse moving there? I'm not able to see it from here. Can you see a mouse moving? No. Okay. So the next one is Thiruvenkadu, which is, you see the red marker just above that. You'll see Thiruvenkadu. Thiruvenkadu, and then here Shivapuram all the way to the left are the next two temples. In both of these, in Thiruvenkadu, they say when he goes there, he only sees Shivalingams everywhere. And he's hesitant to move because he doesn't want to step on a Shivalingam. They say Parvati herself comes and carries him into the temple. And then in Shivapuram, the same thing happens. So this time what he does is he does Anga Pradakshinam to go into the temple because he won't step on Shivalingam, and he sinks there. There are few other temples. I don't think, there's certainly no time to go through each of the temples he visited, but I just wanted to give you a sense for, after talking about each important story, I'll show you a few of the temples that he goes to in this map. Pumpuhar that you see on the right here, that's a very, very important port town, trade town for the Chola Empire. So very soon, he meets the first of the other 63 Nayanars. Right? His name is Tirunilakanta Yalpana, and his wife Matanga Chulamani. So they come to Sirgari, they hear about the boy wonder, and they come to see him. So the Yalpana, as the name implies, he plays this instrument called Yar, which is an ancient Tamil instrument. It's sort of like the veena, but I believe it's a little different from it. So he comes and he falls at Sambandar's feet and he says, please give me the, please give me please give me the right to set all your songs to tune. That's going to be my seva. That's all I'm going to do. You write the songs, I will sing them. Right? So Sambandar agrees, and Yalpanar accompanies him in most of his journeys for all of these. Then Sambandar and Yalpanar together go to visit Chidambaram, which is perhaps one of the most famous temples of that era. And it is said that when Sambandar goes there, all the people of the Chidambaram gather and they want to prostrate at his feet. But apparently Sambandar prostrates at their feet first. And I was reminded of almost the exact same thing that Bhagavan said. When people come to prostrate before me, I prostrate mentally before. And I think, because I want to take every opportunity to talk about Bhagavan's teachings, I thought I would talk about what Bhagavan has said about namaskar and prostration. It's in talk 549 and says, Sri Bhagavan often speaks of Namaskar in the following strain. This Namaskar was originally meant by the ancient sages to serve as a means of surrender to God. The act still prevails, but not the spirit behind it. The doer of Namaskar intends to deceive the object of worship by his act. It is mostly insincere and deceitful. It is meant to cover up innumerable sins. Can God be deceived? The man thinks that God accepts his Namaskar and that he himself is free to continue his old life. They need not come to me. I am not pleased with these Namaskars. These people should keep their minds clean. Instead of that, they bend themselves or lie prostrate before me. I am not deceived by such acts. Again, talk 363. Prostration means subsidence of the ego. What is subsidence? To merge into the source or its origin. God cannot be deceived by outward genuflections, bowings, and prostrations. He sees if the individuality is there or not. So the travels continue. This is, again, you see Sirgari sort of at the right here. Chidambaram is the marked point. The story I'm going to talk about is about the temple, that's the point that is right next to Chidambaram. It is called Nelvayil Arathurai Temple. And then there are all these other places he goes to. They are listed in the Periya Puranam or the songs in that order, but I'm not going to cover those temples. But this Nelvayil Arathurai is very interesting. So because he's a child of 3, right, the father takes him in his shoulder. That's how he used to go until now. Just a few places that he's been to. His father would transport him on his shoulder. But when he goes to this temple, that night or one night, all the priests or the managers of the temple get a dream of Lord Shiva, in which he comes and says, my son is coming to this temple tomorrow. If you go here, there will be a palanquin and an umbrella, pearl-studded palanquin and umbrella available to you. Go take that and give it to him for his travels. The same night, Shiva comes in Sambandar's dream and says, my son, I want you to travel in the palanquin and umbrella that is available for you in this Nelvayil Arathurai temple when you go there. And so, that the next morning they go and it's there. And, you see a sort of a mural in the temple that sort of illustrates the palanquin that Shiva made available. Again, if you think about what would happen in Bhagavan's life, something exactly the same thing. Something Bhagavan would say, something casually, and then it will come in somebody's dream and they will bring it. From something like a notebook for K.K. Nambiar to food items to vessels to, examples are innumerable, medicines to all kinds of things, right? So again, they lived in very different historical eras, but the form of the manifestation and the power of the manifestation to me seems very, very similar for both of them. So next, as you might imagine, the parents want to do Upanayanam for the son, and so they invite the priests, and they start doing the ceremony, and the priests want to tell him the Vedas and the meaning of the Vedas. And so it turns out that the boy already knows everything, and he teaches the priests the import of all the Vedic mantras and everything else, and the priests fall at his feet. But again, the exact same thing, right? Bhagavan, when people read texts to him, he says, oh, this is what they call Brahman. He knew it. He knew everything from experience. This is what they call that. And then you have great saints from if you go back from the initial stages, Kavyakanta, you have Narayana Guru from Kerala. Later on, you have the Shankaracharya of Puri. All enormously great scholars in their own merit, coming and asking Bhagavan for answers to questions that eludes their understanding, at least from an experiential perspective. At the same time, in Sirgari, upper, the upper is the one with the danda, as they call it. So he comes to meet the boy, the son, and he comes and prostrates before Sambandar, and Sambandar prevents him from prostrating. That's what you see there. So you cannot. And they both have such high regard for each other. He calls him Appa, my father. That's how Tirunavukarsar gets the name Appar. Sambandar gives him that name. His given name is Tirunavukarsar. And so, so that's the first meeting. This partnership, if I can call it that, is very, very prominent. The two of them go together to a lot of temples, and they sing a lot of songs together. Many of them you see here, they probably did go together, but this is yet another series of places. And I will talk about a few of them because many of these are very, very interesting stories. A lot of miracles you will see here. I will start with this place down here. It is today called Tiruvasi. It actually was called Pachilasramam, Tirupachilasramam. I guess it was also called Tirupachi and became Tiruvasi today. So as Sambandar goes there, there is a minor local king whose daughter is sick from some unknown ailment, and he is not able to. Nobody is able to cure. So when Sambandar comes there, the king prays to him, please, please cure my daughter. No surprise, Sambandar sings a song, and the daughter wakes up. There's supposed to be a really beautiful song that Sambandar sings at the end of this, but I think I'll move on just in the interest of time. This is the next place he goes to, Tiruchengodu. No, I don't think so. Yeah.
The song says, "Oh, you're dying without saying Karthikeya."
That I don't know. There was one more girl also, I will come to that, he revived. She is actually in Chennai. So it could be one of the two, but it could be her. It could very well be her. So Tiruchengodu, here there is a strange fever that grips the people. That's what you're seeing them in shawls and so on. And they pray for relief. And he sings a song. Again, another remarkable similarity with Bhagavan. He almost uses the exact same words that Bhagavan used when his mother came to Arunachala and fell sick, I think with typhoid fever. And Bhagavan basically alludes, you cure the far greater fever of the death, the births and deaths, or the ocean of births and deaths. What is this fever for you, right? Almost literally the same language Sambandar also sings. I found that really fascinating. This is Bhagavan's prayer to his mother. And you can particularly see the last two paragraphs. He says, Dispeller of illusion, why dost thou delay to dispel my mother's delirium? Is there any but thee to watch as a mother? So Sambandar uses almost the exact same language. I think those things are remarkable. I mean, it's not an obvious thing. It's not just a praise of Shiva or something like that. I thought it was very, very notable to see them use the exact same language. Tiruva Vadudurai, another. Oh, by the way, even in this previous song, in the song that Sambandar, he again alludes to Arunachala, and he says. He talks about how Brahma and Vishnu tried and failed to see your top and your bottom. And he says, you reveal yourself to devotees as you wish. We are your devout slaves. And then he addresses the people there. He says, our angry karma will not touch us, meaning if you pray to Lord Shiva, I declare so in the name of our dark-throated Lord. So that, again, that the power, there is a prayer, but at the end it's like a declaration. It shall be so sort of declaration. This is just this life is too. I mean, the number of stories you find is just incredible. This song is in the temple Tiruvavadurai. His father apparently says, I want to go back home and perform a lot of yajnas, homas for universal welfare, but I don't have money for it. So he just sings a song, and at the end of the song, what you see there, like that's a Shivagana coming and dropping a bag of gold, and so he gives that to his father, and his father leaves Sambandar for the first time. They then go to the town called Dharmapuram, which is the birthplace or the place where Yarpaners' parents and family relatives live. And they apparently have such a high regard for his musical skills that they think that Sambandar's songs are famous only because of the way he tunes them and sings them. That is the thing. And so Yarpaner prays to Sambandar to dispel their incorrect ideas. And Sambandar sings a song. It is called Yar Muri Pan. That's the name of the thing. That Yar Muri is to break. Literally, what it means. Pan is like a raga or a tune. So Yar Muri Pan basically means a tune or a raga that breaks the yar. Meaning he could not even play that song. He sang a song like that to show. And he basically says at the end, it is not about the music. It is not even about the song. It is about the God's grace that flows through the song. That is what gives them the power. That's what Sambandar tells the town. Few others. The reason I pick some of these stories is because he actually meets the other Nayanars, and he probably met the most number of other Nayanars during this short period of time. So I want to dedicate a short slide to each one of those. I only have half hour, but I think I can get through it. This is Tirunilanakkar. Tirunilanakkar and his wife. His wife is even more amazing. So the story goes that he is a devout. He's very devout. He does puja to Shiva every day with utmost care, and his wife is a secret devotee. Again, going back to what Bhagavan would like, right? So what happens is there is apparently one day when he's doing puja, there's a spider hanging down on its web. It is just coming down, as we know, and the spider falls on the Shivalinga, right? And the spider should not fall on the Shivalinga when you're doing puja. So instinctively, what the wife does, she spits on the Shivalinga, and she wipes the place where the spider fell to clean it out. And Tirunilanakkar is horrified. Can you spit on Lord Shiva? And he really shouts at his wife. That night, Shiva comes in Tirunilanakkara's dream, and he shows his body, except for the spot where his wife spit. The rest of the body is affected by the spider's poison, and it's swollen or red and so on. That's the dream he has. So he wakes up next morning and he prostrates before his wife and says, "You are the greater devotee, not me." Similarly here, when Sambandar comes with Yarpanar and a few others, some of the others who accompany them are not Brahmins. And so he is a little, Tirunilanakkar is still very orthodox, right? That's his personality. So it's like, where should I let them sleep? So he asks some of them to sort of go outside the house. There is a sacrificial pit that you see there. It's outside the house, that you go and sleep there for the night, right? So what happens is when they go to sleep there, by Sambandar's grace, the fires start coming up, and they increase in height. And Tirunilanakkar again understands the signal. It's devotion that matters, not what is your birth and ancestry and so on and so forth. Then he apologizes and immediately brings them back, everyone into his own house. The next town, this is an incredible story. I think it's probably the most incredible story among all the 63 Nayanars. The town is called Tiruchenkattankudi, and the Nayanar on the far right is called Siritonda Nayanar. Siritonda means small service. He does small service. That's the name of the Nayanar. Now, what's interesting about this is Siritonda Nayanar's original name was called Paramjyoti. He was a great warrior. He was actually the commander of the Pallava army. This is 6th, 7th century. Northern Tamil Nadu was still ruled by the Pallavas, sort of central Tamil Nadu by the Cholas, and southern southern Tamil Nadu by the Pandyas, right? The Pallavas are in constant battle with what is called the Chalukya Empire, which is sort of Karnataka based. Today, there is a temple, there is a town called Badami. It's called Badami today. It's got a lot of ancient structures dating back to the Chalukya period. The original name is actually Vatapi. And there's a great battle that happens where the Pallava army really decisively defeats the Chalukyas. And their way of signifying their victory, political dominance over the Chalukya is they go and take the most treasured deity of the Chalukyas and they take it away and they install it in their own temple and worship it. So again, to me, it's a marked contrast between what other victors in the past have tended to do to the temples and deities of their opponents. I won't go into that. But so here the attitude is, your sacred deity is now in my temple. I will worship it, right? So that is the famous Vatapi Ganapati. You had Srihari's son sing Vatapi. It was brought back to Chola territory. 1,000 years later, Muthuswami Dikshitar goes to the temple and sings Vatapi Ganapatim Bhajeham. That's the same thing. Vatapi is the Ganapati of the Chalukyas from Karnataka that was brought back by this Nayanar, Paramjyoti, when he was the Pallava commander or king. But when he brings it back, the depth of his devotion becomes apparent to the Pallava king, and he feels sorry that I made a devotee to go and fight a war. He's a saint. That I should not have even asked him. So in response, he tells him, you go and do whatever you want to serve Shiva's devotees. I will finance you for the rest of your life. Whatever money you need will come from me. Right? So he goes and he says he does Siritundu, small service to the devotees of Shiva. His small service is he will not eat on any given day without. So his story continues. It's not just the Vatapi Ganapati, right? He comes back and he says, every day I will feed one Shiva devotee before I eat. So that's his life. So he does puja, he cooks food, he goes out, finds a Shiva devotee, feeds them, and then eats. So one day, he is not able to find. He goes out, he's struggling to find, there's nobody to find. In the meanwhile, sort of a Bairagi, as in a very sort of Bairagis, you could say they live in cemeteries, they have the extreme sort of devotional practice to Shiva. He come to the house, his wife and daughter, a servant, are in the house, and they invite him, please come and sit here, we are so happy, he will come back very soon and we will feed you. And he says, no, I won't enter into a house which has only women. So I will go to this temple. There is a neem tree. I will be sitting underneath it. As soon as he comes back, you call me. So they come back. They tell him the story. Siritunda rushes to the temple. The Bairagi is sitting there. The Bairagi tells him this story. He says, once every 6 months, right, I will only eat a pashu for lunch. Now, pashu has two meanings. It could mean a cow. It could also mean a human being, right? It could mean both. So Siritundar is shocked, but he has to serve him, but he still assumes that it's a cow that he wants. Then he says, no, I don't want a cow. I want to eat a human being. And he lays conditions for what this should be. He says, it should be a boy. He should be 5 years old. He should be in good health. And he should be the only child of the parents. And I want to eat that boy for lunch. And Siritundar goes back and he realizes that description exactly fits his own son. Oh, and then the last condition, the mother should hold the child while the father cuts the child to pieces before cooking. So he goes back, he realizes that the description perfectly fits his own son. So he goes back to his wife and says, nobody else is going to give us their child. So we have to kill our own child. The wife agrees. They kill the child. They cut the head off. Apparently the head should not be offered. And they give it to the maid in the house. They kill the child, cook him, and then invite the Bairagi to come and eat. He comes and sits down. And then he says, where is the head? So the maid servant she was prepared for all contingencies. She had independently cooked the head also. So she brings the head and says, here it is. And then, okay, but I have a rule. I will not eat alone. The host has to sit and eat with me. So Swaminathan sits next to him. And then he says, no, that's not enough either. The host's son should also sit and eat with me. And he tries saying tactfully, oh no, my son is not here today. He will not be able to come. He says, no, you go out and you call your son. And he goes out and he calls the son, and the boy walks. And they are just completely shocked. And they go back into the kitchen. Obviously, the bairagi is gone, the cooked meat is gone, everything is gone. And the boy is still there. And Shiva makes an appearance and says, I just did this to show your greatness to the whole world. And he calls himself Siritondanayana, the guy who does small sons. It's just an incredible, incredible story. They then go on to another town, Tirumaruhal. Tirumaruhal, this story is, you see, obviously, a man is dead, and that's his wife. Actually, not yet his wife. This wife is one of many sisters. And the father had promised his eldest daughter. Mike, you can't hear? I don't know what happened. Is it possible that this has no charge? No, but it's okay. This is okay, right? Okay. So the father promises the eldest daughter in marriage to this boy. In those days, how child marriage, the promise of marriage happens from there. But then the father, one after another, he gets rich grooms asking for his daughters in hand. And so because he thinks, okay, I don't care about the promise, I'm going to marry my daughters off to well-off rich people. This is the final daughter, and the father is also planning to arrange a different groom for her, and she thinks that's not right. So he should not break his word. So she elopes with the man, and then overnight they are sleeping in this temple when a snake bites the man and he dies. And she is wailing, how could this happen to me? And it is said that Sambandar hears the wails on her way, and she goes there and she tells her this whole story. And then obviously Sambandar sings a song, and he wakes up. But to me, literally the same thing has happened in Bhagavan's life. This is 17th of September 1946. This is day by day. The child of T.S. Ramachandra Iyer, right? So this night around 9:15 p.m., TSR's child Ramana was bitten by a snake near the well in their compound. After a few minutes, the child was suffering very much, vomiting and perspiring profusely. They consulted Dr. Shiva Rao and next door, and he gave something which he said was a general antidote for all poisons. In a few minutes, he felt the child's pulse and advised them it would be better to take the child to Bhagavan. They brought the child, and when they entered the ashram, the child was in a state of collapse, the body having become chill and the breath almost ceasing. They entered the hall and told Bhagavan. He touched the child, passed his hands all over the child's body and said, it is nothing, he will be all right. And then, by the time, everything, it seems, and the child himself at that point, as soon as he felt the pain, said, let us go to Bhagavan. The pain will go if I go there. The child said that immediately when the snake was bit. So again, sort of a literal parallel in the two lives. And so this in that temple reflects the wedding of the man and the woman after Sambandar revives him. So you see Sambandar as the boy standing next to them. The next town that I want to briefly mention is Tiruppugalur. where 6 Nayanars meet in one location. As far as I've been able to find, that's the maximum number in one place at one time. Sambandar himself, Appar is there, Trinilaganda Yarpanar is there, Murugan Nayanar, as I mentioned in the name here, he is from Tirupugalur. His only job is to make flower garlands for Shiva while saying Om Namah Shivaya. And that's enough to take him to moksha. And then you have Tirunilanakkar, who we spoke about before, and Siritunda Nayanar, whom we just spoke about. Okay, so now comes perhaps the most important part of Sambandar's mission in this world, which is going to the Pandya country and all he does there. So you see Madurai, and then I've always shown Sirgari right on top. So just to give you a sense, this is probably a couple of 100 kilometers in distance, is what we're talking about from Sirgari to Madurai. You see Rameshwaram there, which is also very famous, right next to Sri Lanka, the island. But in the meanwhile, he first meets another Nayanar called Kunkuliya Kalaya Nayanar. And the story here is that this Nayanar's job is to make incense for Shiva every day in his temple. And what happens is he will never fail that. But he falls on hard economic times. But no matter what, he has to make incense every day to offer to Shiva before he goes. And one day, there is no money. He goes out to beg. But what his wife does is she pledges her tali, Mangal Sutra, to a pawnbroker to raise money for this. And then he gives it to him. And when he goes with a heavy heart, he goes to the temple and offers it to Shiva. And when he comes back, he finds that his house has been transformed into a palace, a lot of wealth. And so it was obviously Shiva who sort of made him do that. Kind of reminds me of the Sudama Krishna story when he offers him puffed rice. This is a funny story, actually, in some ways. Thiruviri Midalai is where you see Tirunavukarasar and the staff and someone that they go together to this temple. It is said that the people of the place are suffering from a drought, no rains. They have a problem. So they both sing songs to Shiva, and then there is a voice that says, there will be 1 gold coin for each of you every day until the season changes and the rains come. But until then, there'll be 1 gold coin for each of Sambandar and Tirunavukarasar there that they can take and they can feed the temple. Sambandar finds that his gold is of inferior quality compared to Tirunavukarasar's. So he's not able to get as much food as Tirunavukarasar is able to. So he goes back and he complains to his father and he sings another song and he asks him why. And so there is a voice that says, you sing songs in my praise, but Appar not only sings songs in my place, he also serves devotees. And so in order to highlight the greatness of service to devotees, that is why I did this. I want to show. Again, the way the Lord teaches lessons even in things like this. The next town along the way is Vedaranyam. It's actually a coastal town. It is said here that the front door of the temple would always be locked. The 4 Vedas took a human form and worshipped Lord Shiva in ages bygone. And then they locked the front door never to open. So the people only going through side doors to go into this temple. So, but Appar and Sambandar go there. They want to open the door. And so they sing songs. So Appar sings 10 songs, Padigam, right? 10 verses, and the door opens. And they all go in and they worship and they come back. And they want to close the door again. Sambandar starts singing now. He sings a Padigam, but as soon as he sings the first verse, the door closes. So now Appar thinks there is something wrong with his devotion because it required 10 songs for him. Yes.
Someone that already gives so much of respect to Appar and gave him his name Appar.
Yeah, there's no competition. It's just they're just asking. In order to go in, one person sings songs, and then the other person says, "Why don't you sing a song now to close?" And so when the song closes, he thinks what. So again, a voice says, I like your singing so much. That's why I let you sing 10 songs, because I want to listen to it more. So, it's just games. Yeah.
Actually,
no, but I thought Shiva says, I like your song singing more. Therefore, I waited until 10 songs were completed before I opened, right? And here he closed the door faster. Okay. This is the
Playful competition.
Playful, yeah. It's just, Bhagavan crack jokes a lot of times, that sort of thing. So here, this is Madurai. This is the main event. So Mangayar Karasi is the wife of the king, Kun Pandyan, who is a Jain. And she is a Hindu, however. She is a devout Shiva devotee. So she prays, please save the king and the kingdom and the Vedic way and Hinduism. And she hears about Tirunjana Sambandar, the great saint, and she says, okay, the best way is somehow I have to bring him to Madurai. And so she invites him, sends a note, and he comes. And as soon as he does that, we just saw he is with Appar, right? He's with him. So Sambandar receives the invite and he gets ready to go. Appar is worried. He says, please don't go. You are just a small boy. You're going to a powerful king who is intent on promoting his religion, and they can be ruthless. You're a boy. Like, what can you do? And so in response, Sambandar sings a song, right? And he says, I think I have a small translation later on, but the song effectively he actually says that Appar actually says the time is not good. It's not a good date. It's not a good auspicious date. So he says, Sambandar sings a song that says, what planet can affect a devotee of Lord Shiva? What can planets do to a devotee of Lord Shiva? Or all days are auspicious for a devotee of Lord Shiva. That sort of confidence. And then he says, I will go. This is the minister receiving the Sambandar at Madurai Meenakshi temple. He goes there and he sings a lot of songs. And in that, Sambandar is supposed to praise the queen herself, Mangayar Karasi, in the songs. And then he comes and meets the queen. Now the queen is also shocked. She didn't expect him to be such a tiny child. He is supposed to be 12 years old at this time. So not 3 years old. Some years have passed. So he's supposed to be 12 years old at this time, but that's still a very small boy. And she also expresses the same fears. What will the thing do? So here is this. The first is, as the Lord is within my heart, no days, no planets can affect me adversely. And every day of the week is equally auspicious. And then he tells the queen, I'm not in any way inferior to these Jains. The Lord is within me. Therefore, don't be afraid. Bhagavan comments on this also, where it says, this is talks May 21st, 1937. And it says that when Bhagavan sang this song, he says that though tender, he was more than a match to the strong group of innumerable Jains. It's recorded that while reciting the stanza, Sri Bhagavan choked and could not proceed with that song. And then he also says, look at the last words in the Madurai Decad, the Madurai Padigam. With what authority he sings, no harm can approach those who sing these songs of the king of Shiali and the master of Tamil. Again, as you say at the end, by my order, those who read these shall be saved. Like that power comes through pretty much in every song that that he sings. So what you see here is the king and the Jain monks are conspiring. We got to get rid of this fellow. How do we do it? And that's the plan. They hatch. So the plan they hatch is to set fire to to the hut that Sambandar is sleeping and is Antra is sleeping that night. So they go and set fire to the hut. And when, but obviously this Sambandar being Shiva himself, Agni Deva effectively goes to him and he bows to him and says, "What should I do? Please tell me." And Sambandar says, "Whoever asked you to come and burn this down, you go and affect him in my, instead." So promptly the king is stricken with a great fever, and it's unbearable. His whole body burns, and so now the problem becomes how to treat the king. So all the Jains come and they try their treatments, but it said that the treatments only make it worse. They're not able to. So the queen suggests that why don't we invite Sambandar to come and try and treat you? And the Jains wouldn't have any of it because they know what's going to happen. So they say, okay, the left half of the king's body we will treat, the right half of the king's body Sambandar can treat. Let's see, who wins or which side wins. So that's what you see here. You see the child standing there and the Jains on this side, and they're both trying to. So the Jains do not succeed, obviously. Sambandar, he applies the ash, sacred ash, vibhuti, on the king, and that side is immediately feels very, very cool, right? So to me, it reminds me of another story. It's not a very famous story, but it's a story that's there of Bhagavan. Similarly, the power of the sacred vibhuti, right? So I think this is after Bhagavan comes down the hill. He's in the old hall, right? But during those days, in public lands, there are a lot of tamarind trees that are grown. And the government needs to harvest the tamarind, right? They give that out as a contract to somebody. You have to bid and you have to win the contract. And whoever wins the contract has a right to harvest the tamarind, keep a piece for themselves and give it the rest to the government. So one year, a Muslim gentleman in Tiruvannamalai wins that contract. And what he knows is the monkeys wreak havoc in the tamarind trees. They go playing around, they drop all the tamarind and so on. So he doesn't want that to happen. So he takes a catapult and he shoots stones at the monkeys. His intent is just to scare them away. He didn't have anything more in mind. But it so happened that one thing hit the monkey squarely on the forehead. It fell down and it died. Right? And so all the monkeys, just imagine this scene. All the monkeys pick up the dead monkey. They come, put the dead monkey in front of Bhagavan, and they start shrieking and shouting. I can't imagine what people would have felt when they saw that. Right? So Bhagavan kept quiet, and he said he's supposed to have uttered in Tamil, right, to the monkeys. He said, whatever. He said, whoever is born has to die at some point. So please don't grieve. Go away, and the monkeys go away. They take the dead monkey and they go away. But then what happens? The Muslim gentleman falls sick with a fever and he's not able to cure. He's getting worse and worse. And his wife is worried. Somehow the news reaches the wife that Bhagavan has cursed the Muslim gentleman because he killed the monkey. Right? So she runs to the old hall. She goes to the Bhagavan and says, Bhagavan says, no, I did not curse anyone. I just stated the truth that anyone who is born has to die someday. That's true of the monkey. That's true of anybody. But the lady wouldn't go. She said, you have to give me vibhuti. I will not go otherwise. And Bhagavan apparently tried to resist a lot. Ultimately, he gave in. He took some ash from that charcoal brazier that's burning constantly in front. He takes some ash, or maybe he told the attendant to give. I'm not sure whether Bhagavan dropped it in her hand or he told the attendant to give, but he gives ash to this lady. She goes and applies ash all over the Muslim gentleman's body, and he gets cured of the fever too. So I think there's it's the exact same cure, so to speak, applied. And there's a beautiful song that, he sings where he praises the power of Tiruniru. Niru, he calls it. Niru means ash, the sacred ash. I'll just play 1 minute of this song and then we can move on. I will stop it. I'm sorry, just in the interest of time. So it's a beautiful song. This is, I remember um, when on one occasion when I went to Nova Scotia ashram, many of us here have been fortunate enough to have Dennis drive all the way to Halifax to pick us up from the airport, right? So I was alone in that trip. There was nobody else, but he insisted on driving and picking me up in the Halifax airport. And the 90-minute drive, I don't know why, but in the 90-minute drive back, he played this song over and over and over on loop. I didn't want to tell him to stop, because if he was playing on loop, for whatever reason he wanted to do it. And the song very deeply imprinted upon myself for that. And we know Bhagavan used to wear Sekar Dash all the time, but he played this song repeatedly. Not this version of the song, a different version of the song, but the same song. So the last two things, the Jain monks would still not admit defeat. So there are two tests, the fire test and the water test. So the fire test is they would write verses or Om Namah Shivaya and drop it into the fire and see which one survives. Obviously, Sambandar's palm leaves survive and the Jains are burned to ashes. And then lastly, in the water, they do same thing and they put it in the water. The palm leaves of the Jains are just drowned, and in no time, Sambandar's not only is not damaged, floats, it floats against the current, up against the current. So at that point, the king is converted, transformed, whatever it says. No, I'll come back to Shaivism. He orders those palm leaves to be retrieved. He takes that, comes and falls at Sambandar's feet. He sings another song in which he says, "May you be well." He tells the king. Now, the king's name, I don't know, I said earlier, his name is Koon Pandian. Koon in Tamil means hunchback. So he had a hunchback. When Sambandar says, "May you be well," his hunchback is also cured. So he becomes a staunch Shaivite. And the king and his queen are actually, I checked, they are also among the 63 Nayanars now, eventually. Nothing very important. There are two temples in Sri Lanka, and Sambandar sings about them as called Tirukonamalai or Trincomalee. It's called in the modern today. I guess it's called that. This is not an ancient temple, meaning the deity may be ancient, but this temple was completely destroyed by the Portuguese in the 17th century. The murtis were found buried nearby, and this temple is only about 60 or 70 years old now. It was rebuilt in the 20th century. I will skip these in the interest of time. I will just mention this one temple, Tirukkalar. This is a temple where one of the Swamis of the Kovilur Mutt, we hear about the Kovilur Mutt very frequently in Bhagavan stories, right? So Veera Shekara Jnana Swami of the Kovilur Mutt, he visited this temple. He visited Bhagavan in 1904 and 05, and he asks questions about Sahaja Samadhi and so on for the sake of his disciples. And then he comes back and he establishes an ashram or an institution here in this temple in Tirukkalar. And it is said that he arranged for a chariot, and the first chariot festival, at the end of it, he attained Samadhi. Tiruppunduruthi is just another interesting story. Nothing that this is where Appar lives. Sambandar comes to visit him, and Appar is so overjoyed. He actually goes and becomes a palanquin bearer. So he's the first one you see in the picture. Sambandar doesn't know that. And he's like, "How can you do this?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm bearing God's child. I'm so happy to carry you in my shoulders." And that's, you see that it's depicted in the temple tower. Here is upper in the picture. There is also an interesting anecdote of Sambandar meeting with Thirumangai Alvar. By the way, I forgot to say one interesting side note about the Jains. There were 8,000 monks who debated him. Generally the thing is, India is once you lose a debate, you adopt the religion of the loser, right? That happened. You see with Shankara and Mandana Mishra. You see in all of these cases. What happens to the Jain monks? This is my own theory. I'm not sure it is true or not. I've heard it somewhere also, but it's not a widely accepted theory. If you look up the Brahmins of Tamil Nadu, there are a number of subcastes. One of the subcastes is called Ashtasahasram. That's one of the subcastes. That literally means 8,000. Like there's no reason why a subcaste would call itself the 8,000, right? And the one theory at least is that it's the 8,000 Jain monks who converted to Shaivism, became Brahmins and householders, and their descendants are the Ashtasahasram, is what it's said. Anyway, so there is one more time they meet. This is a Vaishnava devotee, one among 12, called Thirumangai Alvar. He is the last of the 12 Alvars, and his time coincides. Sambandar and they want to meet each other. They've heard so much about each other. They're eager to meet each other when they get a chance. So Alvar comes through Sirgari, and they meet. Now, there are various other stories and interpretations about what happened. We don't have to go into that. But the point is, they both sing a song. Sambandar is obviously the host here. He is so moved by Alvar's devotion to Vishnu that he gives him a spear. You see that? That spear is a spear of Muruga, the son of Shiva. Right? It is not a Vaishnavite symbol at all. But Thirumangai Alvar alone is always portrayed with that spear. That spear was given to him by Sambandar. That mutual respect and the mutual admiration they had, even though they belong to different branches of Hinduism. I mentioned Buddhists, but something similar happens. There is a dialogue, debate with Buddhists also that Sambandar wins. Again, the interesting there is, if you read the Ashram's translation of Periya Puranam, they have a small excerpt, half a page of the debate. That couldn't have been the whole debate, but it's a very small excerpt. But in that excerpt, it says Sambandar uses an analogy of sleep, which Bhagavan often does. I found that very fascinating too. He says you can't, they talk about the void or shunya, right? And Sambandar uses the response, well, even in sleep, your mind is void or shunya, but that is not the real state, and so on. It underlies the sleep state. And so it's sort of, I found it fascinating that Bhagavan might have very well have said the exact same thing if he had to comment on that issue. Okay. I'm way out of time. Is it okay? Another 10 minutes is okay. I have to cover his visit to Arunachala and his wedding, two most important things. So Sambandar comes to the same temple that Bhagavan goes to on his way to Arunachala from Madurai, right? Kilur and Arayanenallur, except that the order is reversed. Bhagavan comes to Arayanenallur first, then goes to Kilur. Sambandar comes to Kilur first, and then to Arayanenallur. But there is a similarity here. Sambandar comes to this temple, and he has the exact same experience of light that Bhagavan has. He closes his eyes and he experiences this light, and he opens and sees it's not a physical light. Something, the exact same thing. I find that really. So what you see here is on top of this mount is his padukas, as they call it, footwear, footsteps, and that's where he stood. And you see straight ahead, you see the Arunachala hill. You can see seen from the temple. So that's in honor of Sambandar. And of course, we now have, I think this is Bhagavan's statue in the temple now, right? In honor of Bhagavan's visit there. And they both have the identical vision. There's another funny story about how an old man comes there. He asks him for the way to Arunachala. He says, yeah, I stitch garlands for Arunachala. I will take you there. And then he starts going with Sambandar, and a band of thieves attack the entire party, and they take away all their possessions. And of course, the old man is Arunachala Shiva himself. And it is said that there is a voice that says, um, you should, it's meant that one should go humbly without any pomp when you go to see Arunachala Shiva. That's supposedly the lesson. But Shiva comes and returns all the property back to Sambandar and his groups. When Sambandar sings a song, again, talk 529, Bhagavan translates one of those songs. He says, the translation goes, "You are a dense mass of jnana, capable of removing the I am the body idea from your devotees." So the first thing, Sambandar is highly devotional sort of thing, but he sort of almost uses the similar language as Bhagavan would have probably written about Arunachala, right? Dense mass of jnana, capable of removing the I am the body idea. Then there's a description of Arunachala. Herds of gazelles, boars, and bears come down your slopes in the night in search for food in the plains. Herds of elephants go from the plains to your slopes where they may rest. So Bhagavan continued. So this hill must have been a dense forest 1500 years ago. It has since been denuded of the forest by the woodcutters, etc., through several centuries. So Arunachala Reforestation Society still has some work to do. They've done great work, but we're still not in a place where herds of gazelles are running down and boars and bears and elephants and and so on and so forth. By the way, this particular account of Jnana Sambandar visiting Arunachala is not in the Periya Purana, or it is shortened in the Periya Purana, or with only a reference. Bhagavan takes it from Upamanyu's Shiva Bhakta Vilasa, which is the same story of the 63 Nayanas, but in Sanskrit, written by the sage Upamanyu. There's more detail, perhaps. I'm sure they wouldn't have dropped Arunachala, but there's more detail in the Upamanyu's Sanskrit version. And so Bhagavan copies those, those verses. That, of course, is our own Arunachala. I will skip all these minor stories. They're not really important. Kalahasti, he goes to Kalahasti, which is where Kannappa Nayanar lived. I don't think Sambandar meets him, but Kannappa Nayanar, this is in northern territories now. He goes from south to the north before coming back to his home territory. Kanchipuram, Tiruvalankkadu, which is where Karaikalammayar, another Nayanar is. I could have said stories for all these, but I will skip them in the interest of time. He goes to Chennai Kapalishwara. This is, I don't know if this is your other story that you said, Sunita. So there is this girl, I forget her name. The father's name is Shiva Priyar. The daughter is Poompavai. So the father plans to marry this daughter after Sambandar. That's his plan. My daughter will marry Tirunjana Sambandar. Right? So, but what happens is, before Tirunjana Sambandar comes there, she dies at age 7 due to snake bite. And in her case, not only she's died a while back, so she's been cremated, but her father takes her ashes and bones and keeps them in an urn because he wants to wait until Tirunjana Sambandar comes to Chennai. So he finally comes to Kapalishwara temple in Chennai, which we all know really well. And he sings the Padigam and he revives the girl. And so maybe that's the reason she hasn't seen Arunachala's Deepam yet. She has to see. So she revives her, gives her life again. And then, but he says, I will not marry her. She says, because I've given life to her, I'm also like her father now. So I cannot marry her. That's what he tells, and he's on his way. So I'll come to the final pilgrimage. So to give you a sense, you see Chidambaram right on top. You see Shivapuri, I'll come, that's the last stop that Sambandar makes. You see Sirgari, it's a little bit down south here. This is a somewhat more detailed because the scale is too big here. So you see Sirgari and you see Chidambaram, and then you see on right the town called Achalpuram. That is where Sambandar's wedding happens. So the parents now, he's 16 years old. The parents decide it's time for him to get married. They come to him and they pray and they say, again, the way Bhagavan points to the verses of Jnaneshwar, how he talks to his father Vitoba, that life of a householder is not an impediment to Jnana, right? And also you need the Vedic tradition to continue, so we need you to marry. So they all come and pray to him. Sambandar agrees. So they start arranging the marriage. And it is in this temple called Shivaloka Tyagaraja. I'm just showing all this to see these pictures are beautiful, isn't it? Are they much better than Sambandar agrees to marry? Having seeing text on the screen, right? Temple of Shivaloka Tyagaraja, and as the ceremonies go on, there is a Sambandar sings his last song. The last song is on the it's on the greatness of the Panchakshari. Om Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. The greatness of the Panchakshari. He sings his last song, and it is said that there is a great light engulfs the temple. The light is so fierce and powerful that many people think that the temple premises are on fire. That what they are seeing is the brilliance, the brightness of a large fire. They start leaving the temple, some others, they say Nandi, but some others go and they bring back as many people as possible. So people do come back. And Parvati herself makes an appearance and gives vibhuti to everyone. And then Sambandar tells everyone to go into that light, the thing of light. It is said 16,000 people went into that light. That's big even by Indian wedding standards, right? 16,000 people. But they all went into that light. Sambandar takes one final walk around the fire, and he goes into it, and it says all 16,000 go to Shivaloka. That includes many of the 9 hours that we spoke about, Tirunilanakar, Tirunilagandayalpanar, and Sirutondar, and it includes all of them. And they all, that's how it ends in it comes in a blaze and ends in a blaze. Literally, it's just an amazing life of just 16 years. He, more than anybody else, is responsible. Tirunavukarasar and Sundara, they all have their Manikavasagar, they all have debates with Jains and Buddhists and all some extent, but the force of this manifestation is simply the last translation of the song. It says, it guides one to the good path, all those who melt with love and flow with tears as they chant it. It is the essence of the 4 Vedas. Chant our Lord's name, say Om Namah Shivaya. Those were his last words before he disappears with the entire wedding party. So this is a map of 275 temples. They're called Padal Petra Sthalam, which means temples that have a song dedicated to them by one of the 9 hours. 4 of them are in the Himalayas. As I said, I don't think, at least Sambandar, I don't think physically visited them. Kailash, Kedarnath, Gauri Kund, it's a small one, and as a temple in Nepal called Indranila Parvata. What's notable here, there's no song on Kashi. At least I think that was one of the last songs, because we know that a lot of the songs were not recovered. So none of the other Jyotirlingas, Ujjain, Mahakaleshwar, none of them, it's not there. So I think they're all lost. This is all we have. There are 2 in Sri Lanka, 2 in Andhra, Kalahasti and Sri Shailam, 1 in Kerala, Tiruvanchikulam in Thrissur district, 1 in Karnataka, which is Gokarna. And this is a more detailed map of just the Tamil Nadu temples. You see that yellow line is pretty much the path of the Kaveri River, literally there. Green and blue are still Chola country, slightly north and slightly south of the Kaveri River. Red is Pallava nation. The light blue below is the Pandya country. The west, I don't know if it is Chera or not. It could be technically Chera, I'm not sure. But it's outside of the Chola territory as well. And this is the songs in the last word. Vedam Nangilum Meipurulavad Nadan Namam Namachivayame. Vedam Nangilum, in the 4 Vedas, Meipurulavad. Meipurul is the essential truths. Nadan, my Lord, his name, Namam, Namachivayame. So there's Om Namah Shivaya is the essence of all the 4 Vedas. So it's a beautiful thing to be the last words before he disappears from you. Thank you very much.
How can you go from
Yeah.
somebody? and Hansen.
But is Bhagavan Kaundinya Gotram or Parashara Gotram? Yeah. Yeah, it's done. I left it out. I saw that. He belongs to Kaundinya Gotram. Someone.
And someone compares that to Bhagavan, river around his village, and therefore someone concludes that Bhagavan is Krishna.
Oh, okay. 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 Yeah, you can send it. Yeah. I had one more quote here. I won't read it. It's a bit of an extract from Day by Day. If you have the time, you can find it. April 15th, 1946, where among other things, this thing comes up about how did not the crowd that went to attend Sambandar's marriage, including the pipers and the drummers and all the relatives, everybody got salvation. None of them were sadhakas. None of them were devotees. None of them did. This is Devaraj Mudaliar. He wants the easy way out. His personality, right? How can they all get, but why can't I get? That's his question. Bhagavan remained silent. Then he said, it is said Sundarar got a Vimana and went to heaven, and that he invited others to join him, but that none came forward. In Tukaram's life, it is said that he took 21 people with him, and so on and so forth. But in this connection, Devaraj Mudaliar says, I told Bhagavan, it has come down as a sort of tradition, and I have also heard it said that Bhagavan once told some disciples that those who are here, that is with Bhagavan, need not worry about their salvation, even as the upper class passengers, having informed the guard, may quietly go to sleep in their berths and will be awakened and detrained at the destination by the guard. I have not been able to find out when, where, and to whom Bhagavan said these words. Again, Bhagavan said nothing in reply. But so far as I am concerned, the fact that he did not deny it in words or by facial expression is enough to convince me that Bhagavan must have in some unguarded moment uttered these words. But those who are here obviously cannot just mean literally in Tiruvannamalai in 1946, right? It applies to all of us too. So hopefully we have some hope left. Thank you.
So one comment has,
Please.
in addition to Buddhism and Jainism at that time, he also wanted to somehow take away people from just falsely believing Vishnu alone is the God. And that is another thing that is playing in that time. So he has to put that the Atma, the Advaitic self, is the biggest fire, is what we all need to go into. Let's not get kind of bucketed into these things. That's why he keeps putting that Vishnu and Brahma were not able to find Shiva.
Yeah.
And also he again says, how about a mighty warrior who slayed Ravana? Then that question also is answering, saying that Shiva was able to even put down his ego, saying that you cannot be coming to him with ego. Right?
Yep.
So all of that is repeatedly being stressed in those four.
Even when he goes to Rameshwaram, he sort of makes a reference to Rama worshipping Shiva in Rameshwaram in this song. There is a lot more to that. He was he came with a purpose, and that it just swept away everything in his path. That's all there is. It's a gale force.
Thank you.
Thank you.